The Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada is Canada's financial intelligence unit and anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing supervisor. Businesses subject to the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act must report completed or attempted suspicious transactions to FINTRAC when there are reasonable grounds to suspect that the transaction is related to a money laundering, terrorist financing, or sanctions evasion offense. This can be done by submitting a suspicious transaction report, commonly referred to as an STR. This video clarifies the concept of reasonable grounds to suspect. Several illegal activities, including drug trafficking, tax evasion, corruption, fraud, smuggling, and human trafficking, are linked to money laundering, terrorist financing, and sanctions evasion. By tracking the flow of funds to identify unusual transactions, and by monitoring unusual client behavior, you will likely be the first to notice suspicious activity. However, before you decide to submit a suspicious transaction report to FINTRAC, it is important to understand the different thresholds of suspicion. Simple suspicion, the lowest threshold, arises from a hunch or gut feeling without accompanying facts, context, or indicators of money laundering or terrorist financing or characteristics of sanctions evasion. With simple suspicion, the absence of supporting information prompts the search for additional details to substantiate or confirm the initial hunch. Reasonable grounds to suspect is a step above simple suspicion. This is when, based on an assessment of facts, context, and indicators, there is a possibility that a money laundering, terrorist financing, or sanctions evasion offense is occurring. You do not need proof or verification, but in your review, you conclude that a particular transaction is related to the commission of a money laundering, terrorist financing, or sanctions evasion offense. Your suspicion must be reasonable and not biased or prejudiced. You must be able to demonstrate and articulate your suspicion in such a way that another individual reviewing the same information with similar knowledge, experience, and training would likely reach the same conclusion. Reasonable grounds to suspect is the required threshold to submit a suspicious transaction report to FINTRAC. Beyond simple suspicion and reasonable grounds to suspect, there is a higher threshold. It is called reasonable grounds to believe. This is when there are verified facts that support the probability that an offense has occurred. This can occur when you become aware that law enforcement has reached reasonable grounds to believe that a money laundering, terrorist financing, or sanctions evasion offense has occurred. If this is the case, you have surpassed the threshold to submit a suspicious transaction report and must begin an assessment of the related transactions. Money laundering, terrorist financing, and sanctions evasion jeopardize our financial system's integrity and damage the Canadian economy. They fuel corruption, eroding public institutions, and impacting government revenues and international credibility. By complying with your legal obligations, you are deterring criminals, protecting the legitimate economy, and targeting the organized networks threatening Canadians. You are also helping FINTRAC gather insights on patterns, vulnerabilities, and emerging threats within Canada's financial system. And you are helping to enhance the reputation of regulated businesses while building trust with customers, shareholders, and regulators. We all have a role to play in the detection, prevention, and deterrence of money laundering, terrorist financing, and sanctions evasion. Stay up to date on current money laundering and terrorist financing indicators and sanctions evasion characteristics, emerging risks and threats, news, and more by visiting our website at fintrac-canf.canada.ca.